I never thought much about retirement. I mean, I always imagined I'd be old and relaxed, with endless mornings for coffee and books. Just me, my thoughts, and a quiet home. After so many years of hard work, of giving, nurturing, and taking care of everyone else, this should have been my time to finally enjoy life. I was ready, but then, I never counted on this feeling of emptiness creeping in so quickly. My daughter, Ellie, was everything to me. She was the center of my world, the reason I worked so hard to make sure she never had to worry about a thing. I sacrificed a lot for her, career, dreams, even my own peace. I did it all for her. And now, I was beginning to wonder if she ever really noticed. It all started when I retired last month. After spending decades working in social services, helping families and watching people walk in and out of my office, I thought that when I was done I'd have peace. But there was no peace. Just quiet. And not the good kind. The kind that makes you second-guess every decision you ever made. I remember the first morning after I retired. I woke up early as usual. The house was still. The sound of the coffee pot brewing was too loud in the silence. I watched the steam rise from my mug and thought about how quiet the house felt, how different it was. I should have been excited to start my new chapter, but there was something wrong. Something missing. That day, I waited for Ellie to call. She didn't. I'd been waiting for her to visit for weeks. It wasn't anything big, just a simple check-in. I thought, well, she's busy. But the silence that followed, that made me wonder if I was really needed anymore. I didn't let myself think that way, of course. I told myself, she's just got a lot on her plate. She'd come around. She always did. But when she did call a few days later, it wasn't what I expected. Mom, her voice sounded distant, even though we were on the phone. Jason and I found a new place. It's nice, really cozy. We're moving in next week. But, we've been talking, and it's probably time think about downsizing a little. Maybe a smaller place, just until you figure things out. I remember that exact moment. The words hit me like a cold wind. Downsize. Was she serious? My daughter, the one I'd given everything for, just told me to think about downsizing. I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. I just sat there, my hand trembling around the phone. I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say. The quiet after her words felt like a slap in the face. This wasn't the future I had imagined. It wasn't even the future I had earned. But I still held on to that hope. The hope that maybe it was just a misunderstanding. I told myself I'd talk to her soon. Things would get back to normal. I hoped. But that was just the beginning. The days after that conversation felt strange. Like I was living in someone else's house. Ellie had always been the light of my life, the one I put everything on hold for. Yet, here I was, standing in the same kitchen where she had once run around in her pajamas, her laughter filling the air. Now, the silence was deafening. I didn't want to admit it, but I could feel the distance growing between us. I had hoped it would be just a phase, something temporary. I convinced myself that this was just the way life goes, that she was just busy. But the more I waited for her call, the more I realized something was off. The phone rang one afternoon. I jumped, startled. It was Ellie. A part of me expected the same casual tone, the same distant words. But this time it was different. Mom, I've got some news, she said, her voice tight. Jason and I found a place. It's perfect for us, and we're going to move in next week. I've been thinking a lot, and I really think it's time we sold the house. I mean, it's a lot of space for just you now, right? You should think about moving into something smaller, like a one-bedroom or something. You'd be more comfortable. The words came fast, like a bullet train, and they hit me harder than I ever expected. My own daughter was telling me to leave my home, the very home I had worked my whole life to give her. I could feel the color drain from my face as I tried to process what she was saying. Was this really happening? Was she really asking me to leave the house that had been a home for both of us? I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her why. Why was she doing this? Why was she pushing me out of the place that had been my sanctuary? But I didn't. Instead, I asked in the most calm voice I could muster, Ellie, what's really going on? Why are you doing this? Her response was cold, almost robotic. "It's just what's best for us, Mom. Jason and I need to move forward. We've been talking about this for a while. I think it'll be better for everyone." I felt the weight of her words like a heavy blanket suffocating me. I didn't even know how to respond. She sounded so sure of herself, so certain that this was the right decision. But to me, it felt like she was saying goodbye without actually saying the words. I tried to make sense of it, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized she had already made up her mind. Ellie had replaced me with Jason. She no longer needed her mother to be a constant presence in her life. The role I had spent decades playing, being her rock, her caretaker, her source of support, was now being handed off to someone else. I didn't argue. What could I say? I was nothing more than an obligation, a relic of a past that she was ready to discard. But the truth hit me hard. I had been replaced. Not just by Jason, but by the version of Ellie who had outgrown me. And I couldn't blame her. I had let it happen. But the hardest part, Ellie didn't even see it. She didn't understand the depth of what she was doing, how deeply she was cutting me. And that realization crushed me. I hung up the phone, sat down at the kitchen table, and tried to hold back the tears. This wasn't just a decision about selling a house. It was about the end of a chapter. The end of me being needed. And for the first time in years, I felt like a stranger in my own life. It was time for me to face the reality. Ellie wasn't coming back. The family I had built, sacrificed for, was no longer mine to keep. And I had no idea where to go from here. The days that followed Ellie's phone call blurred together. It was like waking up from a bad dream that you can't quite escape, no matter how hard you try. I spent hours walking around the house, touching things, remembering things. The kitchen was still the same, those yellow cabinets, the worn countertop where I'd spent so many mornings with Ellie, making pancakes and gossiping about her school friends. Now it all felt so cold, so distant. Nothing felt real anymore. I found myself staring at the living room window, watching cars drive by, wishing that something outside would break this numbness. But the only thing that really broke through was the sound of the door opening, Ellie walking through it with Jason trailing behind her. I could see it in her eyes. She didn't even look at me the same way anymore. "Hey, Mom," she said, voice as casual as if she were asking me about the weather. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure what to say. There was nothing left to say, was there? "Mom," Ellie continued, "I know it's tough, but Jason and I have been thinking it would be easier if you just, get your own place." Easier? Easier for who? I wanted to scream. Was she even hearing herself? Was she hearing me? She wasn't asking me to move out. She was telling me to. No explanation, no offer of help, just an expectation that I'd accept this new version of our lives. I nodded, trying to maintain some semblance of control over my emotions. I could feel my face go numb, like my whole body had gone into autopilot. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice betraying nothing. But inside, my heart was already breaking. As they left to go back to their new life together, I stayed in the doorway, watching them walk down the front steps, hand in hand. Jason glanced over his shoulder at me, his face neutral. Not kind, not cruel. Just indifferent. And that stung the most. The indifference. It wasn't long before Ellie's new life became louder. I could hear the way she laughed on the phone, or how Jason's voice filled the house when he visited. They would talk in the kitchen, make dinner, and I would stand there, invisible, listening to their conversations as if I weren't even there. Sometimes they'd ask me to join them, but it always felt like an afterthought. A polite gesture to include me in their new world. Then one day, I saw them unpacking boxes. Jason had bought a new couch, a huge one, perfect for their new family. And Ellie was excited, picking out throw pillows and arranging everything just so. I watched them from the hallway, and that was when it hit me. This wasn't just about the house. It wasn't just about me moving out. Ellie had replaced me. She was building a life without me. A life I wasn't invited to be a part of. I stood there frozen. It felt like the world had shifted, and I was left behind. I wanted to say something, to ask why. Why was she doing this? Why had she forgotten me? But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. Instead, I turned around and walked back to my room, closing the door softly behind me. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The tears felt too far away, buried deep under layers of years of sacrifice. Instead, I just sat in silence. I thought of all the times I had put myself second, all the times I'd been the one to pick up the pieces for her. And now, she was putting me in a box labeled old, and packing me away with everything else she no longer needed. I thought about calling my sister, but what would I say? That my daughter was moving on with her life? That I was left to pick up the pieces of a life I'd built for her, only to be told it wasn't enough? I stared out the window, the world moving outside, but inside, I felt like I was standing still, a forgotten piece of furniture that no one cared to dust off anymore. Ellie was gone, and I was too. Or at least, that's what it felt like. I realized, then, how easily she had moved on. How easily they had both moved on. And that was the hardest part to swallow. It wasn't the moving out. It was the fact that Ellie no longer needed me the way she once did. That part was the real sting. And no amount of old photos or sweet memories could take that feeling away. For the first time, I truly felt like a stranger in my own life. The days after Ellie's visit seemed to stretch on forever, each one feeling heavier than the last. It was like living in slow motion, where every second felt like it was dragging me deeper into some kind of cold, unfeeling space. I walked around the house, my house, and I felt like I was walking through someone else's life. Nothing felt real anymore. The empty chair at the kitchen table, the silence in the living room, it all felt suffocating. And then it happened. Ellie came back, but this time it was different. She didn't just pop into chat. There was an urgency in her step, a finality in the way she moved. She walked into the living room, Jason right behind her, his hands buried deep in his pockets, staring at the floor. He didn't even acknowledge me. "Mom," Ellie began, her voice lacking the warmth it once had, "we really need to talk about the house." My stomach turned. I already knew what was coming. But hearing it aloud, hearing the casual way she spoke of the home I had raised her in, made it feel real. Too real. "I've been talking with Jason," she continued, "and we think it's time we sold it. It's just too much for you to handle on your own, and, well, I've got my new life to think about." My chest tightened. "Sell it? You want to sell the house? This house?" She nodded, her eyes focused on her phone, tapping away as if she were making a shopping list. "Yeah, it just makes sense. You don't need all this space, and Jason and I have already started looking for new places. I think it'll be better for everyone if we move forward with this." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. What could I say? Better for everyone felt like a hollow phrase. Better for them, maybe, but not for me. This wasn't just a house. This was my life, my history, everything I had built. And now, it was being taken from me. "Ellie," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "you can't be serious. You're talking about selling our home, your home, just like that." She didn't look up. "It's just a house, Mom. We can't live here forever. It's time to move on. I'm doing this for the both of us. For you, too." I wanted to scream, to tell her how much this hurt, how much I had sacrificed for her, for this family. How had it come to this? But instead, I sat there in silence, feeling the weight of her words crush me. It wasn't just the house, it was everything. My place in her life. My value. The role I had spent decades playing had become nothing more than an afterthought. "You don't need to worry about it," Ellie added, as if she were offering some kind of consolation. "We'll get everything sorted out. You can go to that little place you've been talking about." That little place. I had no idea what she was talking about. The little place was a small apartment I had looked at weeks ago. It wasn't home. It wasn't where I belonged. It was a place where I'd be alone, where I'd be invisible, just another old woman living out her days, quietly. That wasn't my life. Not yet. Jason stepped forward then, offering a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Look, Grace, we just want what's best for you. You're not getting any younger. This place is too big. It's just easier if we move on." His words hit me like a slap, cold and indifferent. He wasn't wrong, of course. This house was big for just me now, but that wasn't the point. The point was that Ellie had already made up her mind. The point was that I didn't matter enough for her to even ask me how I felt. She had replaced me with Jason. They had a new family now, a family that didn't need me. "Easier," I repeated, my voice low. "For who exactly?" Ellie's gaze flicked up, but only for a second, before she turned back to her phone. "For all of us, Mom. It's just what makes sense." I felt the tears threaten, but I held them back. No more. No more tears for a daughter who couldn't see me, who couldn't see the woman who had given her everything. Okay, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Okay, you do what you need to do. But I'll make it clear now, Ellie. I'm not going quietly. I'm not going to let you erase me. Not this time. Ellie didn't respond. Neither did Jason. They just left, as casually as they had entered. I stood there in the silence they left behind, the weight of their words sinking in. They weren't just selling the house. They were selling me. But I wasn't done yet. No matter how much they tried to erase me from their lives, I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't just their caretaker, their mother, their backup plan. I was more than that, and I was going to remind them. Tomorrow, I would start making my own decisions. For the first time in my life, I would live for myself. The silence in the house after Ellie's visit was deafening. My mind raced, trying to process everything she'd said, trying to make sense of it all. How had it come to this? How had I gone from being the center of her world, the one she'd needed, to someone she was trying to downsize? I tried to distract myself, keeping busy around the house. But everything I did felt like I was walking through someone else's life. The house was quiet now, too quiet. Even the sound of my footsteps felt unfamiliar. I kept walking into rooms and wondering why I was even here anymore. It wasn't just the house, it was me. I felt like a ghost in my own life. But the next blow came when I found the envelope on the kitchen table. It was sealed with no return address, just a single word written in Ellie's handwriting. Mom. I didn't want to open it, didn't want to face what it might say. But my hands trembled as I peeled the seal and unfolded the letter inside. It was short, to the point, and cold as ice. Mom, I know this isn't easy, but Jason and I have decided to go ahead with the sale of the house. I've attached a check to cover your share, and I really think you should start thinking about moving into a smaller place. Please let me know what you decide. We're moving forward with our plans, and I hope you can understand. Love. Ellie ****. The words blurred as I read them over and over again. I had to sit down. I hadn't expected this. I had expected something. A phone call, a conversation, a sign that Ellie still saw me as her mother, as the person who had raised her. But this was just a transaction. Just business. The check was for a portion of the house sale, a cold and impersonal sum. Not a gift, not an apology, just a number, a financial agreement, something to settle the matter. I couldn't even bring myself to cash it. I stared at the check in disbelief, my heart sinking lower and lower with each passing second. Ellie hadn't even tried to hide her intention. She had replaced me. All those years of sacrifice, all the nights I stayed up late to help her with schoolwork, the time I spent caring for her when she was sick, the emotional labor of holding our family together, it was all reduced to this, a check and a letter. I had given everything for her, and now, in return, she was offering me a quick fix, a way to get rid of me as efficiently as possible. I was no longer her mother. I was an inconvenience. And this check, it wasn't a gesture of love. It was just a way for her to close the door without having to feel bad about it. I crumpled the letter in my hand and tossed it aside. I couldn't stand to look at it anymore. I felt betrayed, not just by Ellie, but by the very idea of family I had clung to for so long. This was the moment I realized that my entire role in her life had been one of convenience. Her words echoed in my mind. I hope you can understand. I couldn't understand. I could never understand. How could she be so cold? How could she be so unaffected by everything I had done for her? I had spent years putting her needs above mine, and now, it seemed, she had found someone else to do that for her. Jason, the man she was building her life with. The man who, just a few months ago, was a stranger to me. But I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to fall into the same trap I had all those years ago, the one where I just gave and gave without ever asking for anything in return. I stood up, walked over to the window, and stared out at the city below. The life I had known was gone, swept away like dust in the wind. But that didn't mean it was over for me. I wasn't just her mother anymore. I was Grace, and it was time I started acting like it. That night, I packed my things, quietly, methodically, without any fanfare. No more waiting for a phone call that would never come. No more hoping Ellie would return to the person she once was. She was gone, and in her place was a woman who had no room for me in her life. And that was fine. I didn't need her to need me. I could stand on my own. As I left the house, for what I knew would be the last time, I glanced back one final time. The house I had poured so much into was just a house. It wasn't my home anymore. But I was still here, and I would figure out how to make a life for myself away from all of this. Ellie could have a house. She could have Jason, but she wouldn't have me. Not anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something stir inside me. A spark of hope, a reminder that I wasn't done yet. I wasn't just going to fade away. I had more life to live, more to give. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. It's strange how the quietest moments can hit you the hardest. 4 days after I moved out, I tried to convince myself that everything was fine, that I was better off alone. But the loneliness began creeping in. Every room in my small apartment felt too empty. The silence was deafening. I had spent years filling the silence with the sounds of family, of Ellie, and now it was just me. But I wasn't going to let myself fall apart. I couldn't. I refused to. I woke up every morning, went through my routine, kept myself busy with small tasks. I made tea, sat in the small living room, and tried to read. It wasn't much, but it was something. Every day, I told myself, just a little longer. You'll get used to it. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being replaced, of being discarded. Then, a week after I moved out, I got a call. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. "Hello," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, though my heart was pounding. "Mom, it's Ellie." There was a slight tremor in her voice, something I hadn't heard in a long time. My heart lurched. Could this be it? The call I'd been waiting for? The one where she'd apologize and tell me she made a mistake? "Mom, she started, then paused. I could hear Jason's voice in the background, muffled but present. "What is it, Ellie?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. I didn't want to get my hopes up. Not again. "I don't know how to say this," she hesitated. "But Jason and we were talking, and we think it might be better if you, stay with us for a while. You know, until you figure things out. You can stay in the guest room." A small, bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. "Stay with you," I repeated. "You mean come back to the house?" Her words hung in the air. I could feel the guilt in them, the awkwardness. She wasn't sure how to fix this. "You don't have to stay permanently," she said quickly. "Just for a bit. We want to make sure you're okay. We've been worried about you." Worried about me? Weren't these the same people who'd shoved me out the door without a second thought? Now they were worried. My mind spun, and for a moment I considered it. Maybe I should go back, just for a little while. Maybe this was my chance to make things right, to heal the wound that had been growing between us. But then I remembered what had happened. I remembered the letter, the check, the cold distance. "No, Ellie," I said firmly, the words coming out sharper than I meant them to. "I don't need your charity. I don't need to be your burden anymore." There was silence on the other end of the line, and I could feel her shock even through the phone. But I wasn't done. "I spent my life giving to you, Ellie. I gave up everything, my career, my dreams, my own happiness, to make sure you had everything you needed. And this is how you repay me, by pushing me out, treating me like I'm just something to be shuffled around." I could hear her breathing, hear the guilt and regret seeping through the silence. But it didn't matter anymore. This wasn't about fixing things for her. This was about me. "You think I'm just going to come back and be the same person you left behind?" I continued, my voice shaking now. "No, Ellie. I've given too much for too long. I'm done being the person you run to when it's convenient. I'm not your safety net. Not anymore." There was a long pause, and I could almost hear her struggling to find the right words, but it was too late. I had already made up my mind. "I don't want your guest room," I said, softer now but still firm. "And I don't want to be part of your new life. I'm going to figure this out on my own. You don't get to control that anymore." And with that, I hung up. I stood there, staring at the phone in my hand, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had done it. I had drawn the line. I wasn't going back. Not to that house, not to that life. Ellie was gone. She had replaced me. But I wasn't going to let that define me anymore. I didn't need her to feel complete. I had to find a new purpose, a new life. It was time to move forward, on my own terms. The days after my phone call with Ellie passed slowly. My apartment felt quieter than usual, if that was even possible. It was like the silence had settled deeper into the walls, stretching out further, becoming a presence I couldn't ignore. I tried to fill the space with things to do, reading, organizing old files, staring at the same picture frames on the wall, pretending they weren't reminders of a life I once had. But nothing felt like it used to. I hadn't heard from Ellie since that phone call. I had half expected her to show up, to apologize, to beg me to come back. I think, in some way, I even hoped she would. Maybe she'd see what she'd done, and maybe she'd realize that I wasn't just a part of her life to be swept aside when things got difficult. But instead, the silence stretched on. It was louder than her absence. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after I hung up on Ellie, I received a text from her. My heart skipped when I saw her name on the screen, but the message wasn't what I'd hoped for. "Mom, I'm sorry. I know I hurt you. I'm just really trying to figure things out with Jason. He's a big part of my future, and I need to focus on that. But I need you to understand that I'm doing this for both of us, and it's not easy. I hope you'll see that soon. I'll be around." I stared at the message, reading it over and over again, hoping that it might mean something more than just empty words. But it didn't. It was just a reminder that she was moving forward without me. No apology, no real understanding of how deeply she had hurt me. She was still wrapped up in her own world, her new life, her new family. And I was just an afterthought, a side character in her story now. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I wasn't going to play the role of the person who forgives just because it's expected of me. Not anymore. But then, a few days later, Ellie showed up at my door. No call, no text, just her standing there at my doorstep, looking like she had all the answers, like she had come to fix everything. "Mom," she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. She stood there, shifting from one foot to the other, not sure what to do. "Can we talk?" I could see the vulnerability in her eyes, the cracks in her usually confident exterior. She looked tired in a way I hadn't seen her before. Maybe, just maybe, she realized that what she had done wasn't as easy as she had convinced herself it was. I didn't invite her in right away. I just stood there, looking at her. A part of me wanted to let her in, wanted to hear her out, to believe that this was her moment of regret. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt so deeply, wanted to shut the door in her face. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice calm but guarded. I had learned over the past few weeks how to protect myself from the hurt she had caused. I don't know," she said, her voice cracking just slightly. "I guess I just wanted to see you. To tell you that I'm sorry, really sorry, for everything." I nodded slowly, taking in her words, processing the rawness in her tone. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to erase the months of feeling invisible, of being pushed aside without a second thought. It wasn't enough to undo the pain she'd caused by telling me I was no longer needed. "You know," I said, my voice tight, "you've said that a lot. You keep saying you're sorry, but nothing's changed. I'm still here alone. You've moved on, Ellie. You've replaced me, and I don't think you even see it. You're so caught up in your new life, in Jason, that you've forgotten about the person who made sure you were okay every single day." She flinched, the words hitting her harder than I expected. For a moment, I saw something in her eyes, something like guilt, like she was finally beginning to realize what she had done. But it was too little, too late. "I didn't replace you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I thought this was the right thing. But I see now that I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I don't know how to make it right." "You can't make it right," I replied, shaking my head slowly. "Not anymore." There was silence between us, the kind that fills a room and settles deep into your bones. Ellie's eyes welled up, and for the first time in a long time, I saw the daughter I had raised, the one who had needed me, the one who once looked at me like I was her world. But I couldn't go back to that. I couldn't let her undo what had already been done. Not for me, not for her. "Maybe you don't need me anymore," I said softly. "And maybe that's okay. But I need to learn how to live for me, Ellie. Not for you, not for anyone else. Just for me." Her tears spilled over then, but I didn't move. I couldn't. "I have to go," I said after a long pause. "You don't need me. You have Jason, and that's where you belong. But I'm done being the person you come to when it's convenient. I won't be that for you anymore." I could see her struggling, her face contorted with confusion and regret, but I couldn't fix it. Not anymore. I had given her all I could, and she had taken it without ever fully appreciating it. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered one last time before she turned and walked away. And just like that, I closed the door behind her, and the silence returned. But this time, it wasn't suffocating. It was freeing. For the first time in a long time, I was alone. But I wasn't lonely, and that was a feeling I hadn't had in years. I was free. The days after Ellie left felt strangely light, almost surreal. For the first time in weeks, I woke up without that constant weight in my chest, the suffocating feeling of being abandoned, replaced. It had been building for so long, this sense of being invisible, of losing my place in the world. And yet, now that it was gone, I didn't know how to feel about it. I spent the first few days in my small apartment, just being. It felt odd at first, sitting in the quiet, knowing that I wasn't being constantly pulled in a million directions, that I wasn't waiting for a call or a text from Ellie or trying to figure out what was expected of me. But after the silence stretched for a while, I realized it wasn't loneliness I was feeling. It was freedom. 4 years, I had been the one to hold everything together. The house, the family, the schedules, the needs. I had never taken time for myself. But now, it was all mine to figure out. I started small. Little things at first, taking a walk around the neighborhood, picking up a paintbrush again, something I hadn't done in years. I found an old canvas in the back of my closet, a reminder of a time before I was just Mom and Ellie's caretaker. I painted, not for anyone else, not for any reason, just because I wanted to. The colors felt good, felt like they belonged. It was strange, but for the first time in ages, I didn't feel like I had to answer to anyone. I spent the next few days taking long walks around the city. Los Angeles had always been my home, but I had never truly explored it. I had been too busy, too focused on what everyone else needed. But now, I saw it differently. I found little cafes tucked in corners, art galleries on side streets, quiet spots by the beach where no one bothered to go. And I went to them, not because I was expected to, but because I wanted to. I thought about Ellie occasionally, of course. I couldn't just erase her from my mind. But as the days passed, I began to realize something. The version of myself that had been lost in her shadow, that had given everything for a daughter who didn't even see her, she was still in there. She was just buried beneath years of sacrifice and silence. But now, with the weight of her absence, I was finally able to breathe again. I wasn't just Grace anymore. I was something else, someone else. Someone who had dreams, who had a life of her own waiting to be lived. One evening, as I sat on a park bench watching the sunset, I realized I had been living for other people for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to live for myself. To be Grace without the labels, without the expectations. Just me. A few weeks later, my phone rang again. It was Ellie. For a moment, my heart skipped a beat, like an old reflex I hadn't quite let go of. But this time, when I picked up, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't the same person I was the last time we spoke. "Mom," Ellie said, her voice quieter this time, unsure. I've been thinking a lot. About everything. About how I've treated you. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed you away." I closed my eyes for a moment, the weight of her apology hanging in the air. I didn't know what to say. For so long, I had waited for this moment, waited for Ellie to realize what she had done. But now that it was here, it felt hollow. The words were nice, but they didn't fix everything. "I've been thinking, too," I said, my voice steady. "And I don't need you to apologize, Ellie. Not anymore. I needed to learn how to live for myself. And that's what I'm doing. I'm not angry, I'm not upset. I just don't need you to take care of me anymore. I need to take care of me, just like you need to take care of your life." There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I wondered if she would get it. If she would understand that this wasn't about her, it was about me. "I understand," she said finally, her voice small. I think I needed to hear that. I've been selfish, but I'll figure it out. I hope you know I love you, Mom." I smiled softly, even though she couldn't see it. "I love you too, Ellie. But you have to live your life. And I have to live mine. After the call ended, I sat back on the bench, letting the quiet settle in again. It felt right. It felt like a weight had been lifted, but this time, it wasn't because of Ellie or anything else. It was because I had finally learned to live for myself. In the weeks that followed, I didn't look back. I found new hobbies, new passions, new ways to fill my time that had nothing to do with anyone else. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping others in ways that felt fulfilling without draining me. I even started making plans to travel, something I had never done before. I wasn't the same person I had been when I was chasing after Ellie's approval or trying to hold on to a life that wasn't mine to keep. Now, I was living for me. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited about what was coming next. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. I knew that, but I also knew that I wasn't alone. Not anymore. For the first time in years, I felt whole. And that was the beginning of a new chapter. One that was all mine. It had been a few months since I had started living for myself. My apartment felt more like home with every passing day. I had turned the living room into a space where I could relax, read, or paint without worrying about anyone else. The past few weeks had been filled with small victories, reclaiming my own time, enjoying my own space, and slowly rediscovering the woman I had buried for so many years. But then, one afternoon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't heard from Ellie since our phone call weeks ago, and I didn't have any friends or family who visited without warning. But the ringing persisted, insistent and loud, forcing me to put down the book I was reading and answer the door. I opened it slowly, just enough to see who was standing on the other side. It was Ellie. She looked different. There was a weariness in her eyes that I hadn't seen before, a kind of quiet exhaustion. Her face was drawn, her hair not as neatly done as usual. It was as if the weight of everything had finally caught up with her. I took a deep breath before I said anything. My heart skipped a beat. It had been a while since I'd seen her, and even though I was ready to face her, I wasn't sure what to expect. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. Her voice was cautious, like she wasn't sure if she had permission to be here. "Can we talk?" I stood there for a moment, unsure of how to respond. I had moved on, and I wasn't sure I was ready to revisit the past. But I knew that, at some point, I would have to face this. I opened the door wider, stepping aside. "Come in," I said quietly. She stepped inside, hesitantly. I led her to the small couch in the corner of the room, offering her a seat. I sat opposite her, waiting for her to speak, but she stayed quiet, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She seemed different, like she wasn't the same person who had so casually pushed me away only months ago. I broke the silence first. "What's going on, Ellie? Why are you here?" She took a deep breath, her eyes downcast, as though she was gathering the courage to speak. I don't know how to say this, but I've been thinking a lot. A lot about you. About what happened. About how I hurt you." My heart tightened, but I didn't let it show. I had come so far since the last time we spoke. I wasn't going to fall back into the role of the victim, not for anyone, not even for her. "I don't need your apology," I said quietly, my voice steady. "I've already moved on, Ellie. I'm living my life for the first time in a long time. I've stopped waiting for you to come back and fix things." She looked up then, and I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, regret, maybe, but also something deeper. "I don't expect you to forgive me just like that. I don't think I can make up for what I did. I had to see you. I had to tell you that I'm sorry. For everything." I couldn't hold back the small, bitter laugh that escaped me. "You don't get to show up now, Ellie. Not after everything that's happened. Not after you've replaced me so easily with your new life." Her eyes filled with tears, and she quickly wiped them away, trying to compose herself. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know how to fix it, but I see now what I've done. I didn't realize how much I was asking of you. You gave up everything for me, and I pushed you aside like it didn't matter." I watched her, her face twisted with guilt. It wasn't enough. It couldn't be. "You did push me aside, Ellie. You took everything I gave you, and then you tossed me aside when I wasn't useful anymore." She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was selfish. I see that now. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for taking you for granted." The words hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. And for a moment, I thought about telling her how much I had hurt, how deep the pain ran, how much I missed the old version of our relationship. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I wasn't that person anymore, the one who needed her apology to feel whole. "I know you're sorry," I said softly, "but it doesn't change anything. You've made your choices. You've moved on, and I've learned to do the same. I can't go back." She stared at the floor, nodding again, her shoulders slumping in resignation. "I understand. I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I've done. And I'm sorry for not seeing you, Mom." The words felt hollow, but I didn't want to feel anger or resentment. I had done enough of that in the past. I had to move on. I was already living for myself, not for anyone else. I didn't need her approval anymore. "I appreciate that," I said, my voice calm. "But I need you to understand that I'm not the same person you left behind. I've learned to stand on my own 2 feet, and I'm not going to be your safety net anymore. Not for you, not for anyone." She took a long breath, clearly hurt by my words, but there was no turning back now. "I know. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I love you and I always will." I nodded, but my heart wasn't aching anymore. I had given her my love, and now it was time to give it to myself. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was just done. "I know," I said simply, "and I love you too. But I have to let go now, Ellie. And so do you." And with that, I stood up. She hesitated, but I knew there was nothing more to say. She walked toward the door, her steps slower than usual, but I didn't follow her. I didn't try to fix it. I had done enough of that. I had done my part. When the door clicked shut behind her, I felt it. A sense of finality, a sense of freedom. The past was gone. And with it, so was the old me. Now it was just me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I felt whole. I turned back to the living room, the sunlight spilling through the window. It felt like a new day. My new day. And I was ready for it. The days following Ellie's visit were quiet, but not the kind of quiet that suffocates you with loneliness. It was a peaceful silence, one that seemed to settle over me like a warm blanket. The weight that had been pressing down on my chest for months, maybe even years, had finally lifted. The emptiness I had feared was now filled with a sense of freedom I hadn't known I was capable of. I had spent so many years giving, bending, and shaping myself into whoever others needed me to be. I had sacrificed parts of myself for Ellie, for the family, for their approval. But now, finally, it was just me. It was just Grace. For the first time in a long time, I felt my breath come easier. I wasn't in a rush anymore. I didn't have to perform or meet anyone's expectations. I could just exist, be myself, without apology or guilt. I spent that next week sorting through old boxes, memories of my past life. Pictures from family vacations, old birthday cards, Ellie's school report cards. Things I had saved because they represented the person I once was, the person I had wanted to be. Some things I packed away into a box, things I wasn't ready to face yet. Others I let go of. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I couldn't move forward while holding on to the past. And I felt lighter, little by little. But then one evening, as I sat by the window, watching the sun sink into the horizon, I received a letter. It wasn't a call or a text this time, just a plain white envelope with my name written neatly on the front. My heart skipped when I saw the handwriting. It was Ellie's. I hadn't expected to hear from her again, not after everything. Not after I had drawn the line. I hadn't responded to her last message, hadn't reached out in any way. But something told me I needed to open this letter. Something told me this was the last step. I opened it slowly, feeling the paper between my fingers, and began reading. "Mom, I don't know how to begin, but I guess I just want to tell you what I couldn't say before. I'm sorry, truly sorry for how I've treated you. You gave everything for me, and I just took it for granted. I didn't understand what it meant to love and care for someone the way you loved me. And I'm sorry for that. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About how we've changed. About how I've changed. I realize now that I was selfish, that I took you for granted, and that I can't undo the past. But I want to try. I want to make things right between us, even if it takes time. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I know I can't just come back into your life like nothing happened. But I hope, in time, you'll see that I'm truly sorry. I miss you, Mom. And I love you. Love. Ellie asterisk asterisk. I stared at the letter, my heart swelling with a mixture of relief and sadness. It was everything I had needed to hear, everything I had wanted for so long. And yet, it didn't change anything. It was too late. I folded the letter carefully, placing it on the table in front of me. Ellie's apology was heartfelt, no doubt. But it wasn't the apology I needed anymore. The person I needed to forgive was myself. I sat back in my chair, taking in the stillness of the room around me. The weight of the past, the sacrifices, the unspoken expectations, the years I had spent chasing someone else's approval, had lifted. It was gone, and I realized with a quiet certainty that I had moved on. Ellie's life was hers now. My life was mine, and I had no intention of letting that go. The next morning, I woke up early. I dressed in my most comfortable clothes and grabbed a small suitcase. I'd been planning this for weeks, but now it felt real. This was my moment. I had booked a flight one way. A new adventure, a new beginning. No more looking back, no more regrets. As I boarded the plane, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I wasn't running away. I wasn't hiding from my past. I was walking into a future I had always dreamed of, but never had the courage to pursue. Now I was doing it. For me. The flight was long, but I spent it lost in thought, imagining all the places I would go, all the things I would do. The world was still wide open, and it was waiting for me. When I arrived, I didn't feel alone. I felt free. Free to make my own decisions, to shape my own life. I stepped out of the airport, the sun setting in the distance, and I breathed in the fresh air. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. This wasn't the end of my journey. It was just the beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I was exactly who I was supposed to be. Grace. Just Grace. And that was enough.